Thank you, Steve. The Target 12 investigators have breaking news in the 38 Studios investigation. The head of the Rhode Island State Police just held an impromptu news conference lashing out at 38 Studios founder Curt Schilling.
Colonel Assumpico also revealed that some of the interviews in the criminal probe weren't recorded by detectives. She says at the direction of the previous state police administration. Let's get right to Target 12 investigator Tim White, who's live in studio now with the latest developments. Tim?
Colonel Assumpico held a news conference to push back at Schilling, who she felt questioned the integrity of the state police in the Providence Journal today. But she also shed light on why we didn't see transcripts with everyone who was interviewed by detectives. Now, Schilling and others have questioned why key players in the 38 Studios deal weren't interviewed, notably Providence lawyer and tax broker Michael Corso and former House Speakers Gordon Fox and William Murphy. Assumpico says they had the legal right to refuse to be interviewed, but she also raised the possibility that they could have gone before a grand jury to be questioned, though added she does not have the authority to see the grand jury investigation. Assumpico also says some of the transcripts from the interviews with lawmakers who voted on the loan guarantee program weren't part of the release of materials last week because they don't exist.
I learned we initially taped and transcribed every interview. Those are the statements you saw last week. But at some point, the investigators were told by members of the former administration that taping these interviews was not necessary. Investigators instead summarized the interviews in one statement, which was in the material released last week. We have no further records of any of those interviews.
Now, I just got off the phone with former Colonel Stephen O'Donnell, who says detectives may have told him they wouldn't bother recording certain interviews because they didn't think much would be offered, and he said he would have been okay with that. Now, Assumpico says while she is bothered with some of the investigation and how it was handled, she is comfortable with the findings that resulted in no criminal charges, and she does not plan to reopen the probe. With the Target 12 investigators, Tim White, Eyewitness News.
First, we're working breaking news in the 38 Studios saga. The head of the Rhode Island State Police is pushing back at Curt Schilling and raising questions about why some interviews in the 38 Studios criminal probe were not recorded by detectives.
Target 12 investigator Tim White was at the news conference at the State House today, and he's here now with the latest developments. Tim?
Mike Shannon, in that impromptu news conference, Colonel Assumpico says she wanted to answer why certain transcripts with lawmakers weren't part of the 38 Studios documents released last week. The answer was simple: they don't exist.
I'm as bothered by all of this as you are.
Colonel Assumpico lashing out at Curt Schilling, who questioned why detectives didn't interview key players from the 38 Studios deal, including lawyer and tax broker Michael Corso, as well as former House Speakers Gordon Fox and William Murphy.
It is my understanding that each of these individuals declined to be interviewed, and it is their legal right to do so.
Though they could still have been interviewed by the grand jury that investigated the case. Assumpico also says there was a reason transcripts from some lawmakers that voted on a loan guarantee program weren't released in documents last week.
But at some point, the investigators were told by members of the former administration that taping these interviews was not necessary.
Former State Police Colonel Stephen O'Donnell tells Target 12 no one was ordered not to record interviews, but that detectives may have decided certain people wouldn't have much to offer. Assumpico also says there was no formal interview with Attorney General Peter Kilmartin, who was a lawmaker at the time, because he was questioned by the previous administration of the state police.
We have no records of that interview. Why? I can't explain that.
But despite all these questions, the state police say they have no plans to reopen the 38 Studios criminal case.
If we could have pressed charges against somebody, believe me, we would have, but we just didn't have it.
O'Donnell tells me he did speak with Kilmartin early on to determine if the Attorney General had a conflict of interest, but says Kilmartin had little to offer besides saying he just voted on the loan guarantee program. So O'Donnell says detectives may have decided not to do a formal interview as a result. Now, O'Donnell also tells me he stands by the work his detectives did on the case. With the Target 12 investigators, Tim White, Eyewitness News.